Hi, parents. I wanted to go ahead and reshare the adding and subtracting three-digit number strategies that we've been using. These are the same strategies that we used for two-digit numbers at the beginning of the year, but I know a lot of people, there's confusion, and you know, parents are working with students even more because of telework. So I did want to go ahead and share the strategies again so that you could see them. And when I teach them to you, I'm going to teach them to you in the order that we would teach them to students based on their level of understanding. With the first strategy being like this student is struggling. They don't quite have our place value strategy. They're not quite fluent in adding and subtracting numbers. Like they can't tell you 17 minus 9 without counting on their fingers, that kind of thing. And their strategy that I would suggest for them would be when in doubt, draw it out. We also call this the base 10 blocks strategy. So this is when they draw it out. And what I like for students to do is I teach kids because things can get really messy. What I like to see from them is to make a hutto, or what I call it, 100 tens and ones chart. So the first thing they would do is they would draw 217, so 100, 200. These big squares, that's what they stand for. 210, and then 211, 212, 213, 214, 215, 216, 217. I choose to kind of do five and then start a new line because I think it's easier to see if it's a group of 10 or not. And then they would just draw the next number, which is 385. So 100, 200, 300, 310, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. Well, by looking at this, the way that I've drawn it out, I can tell that there are more tens. The first thing I do is I check my ones place. Are there 10 ones that need to become a group of 10? So 10 ones that need to be regrouped into 110, and I can tell that there are. So I just circle the 10 ones, and then I cross it out because now it's coming over here to be one group of 10. All right. And then I can look here in the hundreds place to see the tens place to see if there are 10 groups of 10, which would equal one group of 100. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are. So again, I would circle that. I would regroup it, and I would draw my group of 100 over here. And so now that all of that's done, there aren't 10 hundreds. Sometimes there are, but there aren't. And so now I would say, okay, there are 600s. There's no 10 groups of 10 and no groups of 10 in the tens place. And there are two ones. So my answer is 602. And so I'd write that up there. Or they could, if some kids like to do this, they like to say 600 and then they say 0 and then they say 2 and they kind of add that together. This shows place value strategy because you can see the hundreds, you can see the tens, you can see the ones, and we're kind of breaking it apart in that place value. And most importantly, we're showing regrouping. If you understand this strategy and understand place value, you know why things are regrouping, and you can show that. And that's really important because if students are just counting, but they don't understand, they're not showing that they understand place value. All right, I'm going to use the same equation, and now I'm going to show you now I'm going to show you the next strategy that we would teach kids. This is probably the most friendly one. That's not the one we just did, which is called expanded form. And this is really important. Some students don't want to take this step, which is to actually write down the value of each of the digits in the number, break this number into expanded form. And they're having problems because they don't quite have that place value understanding yet. So I've been trying to get students to break it down into expanded form first and then add it. And by expanded form, all I mean is the value of each digit in a number. This 2 is worth 200. This 1 is worth 10. This 7 is worth 7. This 3 is worth 300. This 8 is worth 80. This 5 is worth 5. And now we're going to add it together. And usually when we add it together, we do something like this. So 200 plus 300 is 500. Sorry, my watch is talking. 10 plus 80 is 90. And 7 plus 5 is 12. Now, a lot of times I'll have kids, depending on their place value understanding, they can't add these two numbers on their head. So I go ahead and have them break apart the 12 into its place, the same thing, into expanded form, so that we can then add 90 plus 10 is 100. 100, oh, well, 100 plus 2 is 102. And then 102 plus 500 is 602. But you could also have said 500 plus 100 is 600 plus 2 is 602. Really being neat is important, and I like when students circle their answer. That way I can see it, especially in this. Some students don't need to break it down this far. They can just go ahead and add those two numbers and get 102. A lot of students do need that. Some students need to actually draw over here and over here. We need to draw like groups of 10, like in this strategy, as kind of a stepping stone. So if your kids are trying, they can do this well, and it's easy, then we can move here, and they can still do a bit of drawing to help them. So they can say, oh, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, if they need to. So this it's kind of a stepping stone, is to draw the pictures while we're doing expanded form. And so that hopefully students will be able to get to the point where they can do it without having to draw the pictures. The next addition strategy is called open number line. Now we like to use open number line a lot for subtraction, but for addition, this is what open number line would look like. So I like to tell kids to start at the largest number. They can start whichever number they want, but I'm going to start at the largest number, which is 385, and now I'm going to add 217. So first I'm going to add 100, because that's got 200s, right? And I got to 485. Then I'm going to add another 100 to get to 585. So right now I've added my 200. Now I'm going to add 10, and that is 595. So I've added my 10, and I'm going to add 7. Now some kids, they can't just add 7, so they might say plus 5, and that would get them to 600. So 7 minus 5 equals 2. And then they might say plus 2, so that's 602. And that's my answer. And I would double check that I said 100, 200, 210, 15, 217. So I double check that I added this number there. You can see that this is a little more advanced than this one, because they have to be able to do that kind of addition in their head. They also could have, if they were very fluent, they might do something like this. Plus 200, which would equal 585, plus 10, 595, plus 7, 602. Some kids can do that, and that's fine. A lot of kids, even this, some kids might do it where they have this and they say the plus 100, and then they might say still plus another 100, and then they might say plus their 10, and then maybe they need to add plus 1 and do 596, and plus 1, 597, plus 1, 598, plus 1, 599, until they get to 602. So they're adding 7 ones, like 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. The only downside with this strategy is you do have to be neat. Just like with all the strategies, you can't be really messy, and you've got to write that number that you're hopping to underneath the actual place you're stopping, or it gets really confusing. So that's the one hitch. The other strategy that I've taught the kids is called compensation. A lot of kids like compensation for a subtraction, so I don't teach them compensation as much for addition, because it gets confusing. But compensation for addition, and this is what I would teach to kids who really understand place value, they could do this strategy with ease, they can do this strategy with ease, they can do this strategy with ease. They've already kind of mastered all of that. They really understand. Is what we call, you add ones, you add tens to get one of these two numbers to a friendly number. So I'm going to say I want to get the number, this number to be a friendly number, which means I want to get it to end in 2 zeros. But the trick is you only add ones, you only add tens. You don't add like 15 to this. So I might say, okay, I'm going to add 5 here. And with addition compensation, what you add to one, you take away from the other. Or what you take away from one, you add to the other. So you do the opposite. So right here, 385 plus 5 would be 390. And 217 minus 5 would be 212. And then I would say, oh, 90. If I add 10 to 90, so I'm going to take away 10. So if I add 10 to 90, that would be 400. And if I take away 10 from 212, that's 202. So my answer, and see now right here, I'm adding only hundreds, is 602. So you can do, that's compensation addition. So hopefully that helped. I'm going to do another video. I was going to do the same one, but this one kind of ran a little long. So I'm going to do another video with the subtraction strategies. Okay?